Hey guys, it's Hink here. So today we're going to be breaking down what I would call my Hink's tier list of the best and worst exercises 2023 edition. As we're going into the new year, I've done a lot of learning, a lot of researching. I've come to some different conclusions. I want to bring you my tier list on what I think is the best. So let's get right into it. This bottom tier here, I don't know whether it'd be F tier or I'm going to call it N tier because I would never recommend it. First on that would be the side to side stretch. That's when you're doing a manual stretch, but you're pulling and you're moving at the same time. I've talked about it before. It puts a lot of stress on your suspensory ligament, can predispose you to damage. I have a lot of guys that I've coached that have damaged themselves that way. So never do that. The next would be, honestly, traditional jelqing. I think, there's a lot of guys, and I'm sure there's going to be, I was on Thunder's place, and I've jumped for years, and I've never injured myself, and that's fine, guys. Once again, this is my list. I'd love to know what your list is down in the comments. But jelqing, I have a lot of guys that injure themselves jelqing. They start to jelq, they feel a pop, and they go soft, and they're never the same after that. I think it's dangerous. I think it's a dynamic exercise where you're applying pressure and moving at the same time. I would never recommend it. So next is going to be any kind of pills or gummies. So guys, you can still go on the internet and find plenty of places where there'll be, doctors hate this one simple trick, or these gummies will add 4 inches in 4 weeks or something like that. I mean, everybody knows it's bogus, guys. Please don't waste your time or money with that. And then actually ligament surgery or the pneuma surgery, guys. Most of these invasive penile surgeries, they only improve flaccid length and girth. They do nothing for erect length, and they can sometimes improve your erect girth, but there's a lot of complications. I know a lot of people who have gotten things like the pneuma implant and had to get it removed, which has resulted in fibrosis, and they've had to basically start from scratch with an even smaller penis than when they initially started because of those things. All right, guys, so next we're going to move up to what I would call my D tier, okay? Which is still kind of crappy, but better than never do it. I'm not throwing any shade here, guys, but number one on that list for me in this D tier is going to be the Angion, okay? Do I think for the most part it's safe? Like, yes, there are actually injuries that occur from Angion. So, guys, this isn't as safe as, like, people like to make it out to be. I have coached guys that have injured themselves through Angion, okay? I also think it doesn't do much at all for actual size increase. I think if there is any benefit, it's in erection quality, and quite honestly, I think it's from like the other tenements of it, which is like no fap, and like you're basically no fapping and you're edging all day. So I think of course it's going to lead to better erection quality. Full disclosure, guys, about this whole list, a lot of these things I've never really participated in, okay? So take my list with a grain of salt. But when it comes to Angion, there was a 2-day period where I actually tried it and I was like, what am I even doing with my life? I'm done with this. On to the next, okay? So next in the D tier would actually be noose extenders. The reason for this is when you have like a thin silicone strap that goes right around your glands, okay? That's putting a lot of pressure. It can actually literally constrict the blood flow. And I've actually even recently coached a guy who has like a permanent indentation around the glands of his penis from having this noose extender in place. And he didn't even use it for that long. There's just a lot of injuries that can occur from it, and I think there's definitely better ways to do an extender. So I would not recommend a noose extender. Next in this D tier is going to be actually fillers. Fillers will cause you some girth for sure. They're not going to help with actually any erect length changes. They can help with flaccid and erect girth, and they can help with flaccid length just because the weight of your penis is going to be heavier, so it's going to hang lower. The reason why this is so low is because number one, you often have to get multiple fills. It's not like a permanent thing. You have to go in and like keep getting fills. Along with that is they can like distribute abnormally, so you can have different lumps and bumps. There was just a guy on our subreddit r/gettingbigger that complained about how like he actually is getting his removed because it was like lumpy and bumpy and it looked abnormal, okay? Nobody wants a Quasimodo dick, at least most guys. Some of these guys that like to pump for prolonged period of times enjoy it, and whatever, if that's what you like, that's what you like. And oftentimes with fillers, like I said, they need to inject something like hyaluronidase or something that's going to actually break down the fillers that are in there. I wouldn't recommend you pursue that. If you want to do it, do you. If you've had a good experience, leave it in the comments. So next is going to be my C tier. So C tier means like basically it's fine. I think it either has a higher risk, but it still has some rewards, or it's like not as effective, okay? To start with this, I'm gonna actually say manual girth exercises, whether that be just like manual clamping with your hand or doing something like a diamond joke. I just don't particularly think that manual exercises are going to be, for girth, are going to be particularly helpful because they require a lot of either grip strength or a lot of repetitive motions. I still don't like any kind of dynamic exercise. When you're doing a diamond joke and you're just like, not constricting the whole thing only on the sides, it's still moving up and you're still applying a lot of pressure. I don't think it's that safe. I don't think it's nearly as dangerous as like a traditional joke, but I wouldn't recommend it personally, and this happens to be my list. So next would be a water pump that doesn't have the hand pump attachment. Okay, you guys know what I'm talking about, BMs. And that is partially dangerous because of the fact that, number one, you're jamming that into like your pubic area where that neurovascular bundle comes out along the dorsal or like the top surface of your penis. So you could actually damage it just by jamming it in there. Number two is because when you are jamming it in there, you can squirt out a lot of that water, which causes a dramatic and immediate increase in the pressure. That immediate pressure change is going to be transferred to your penis, and it can predispose you to injury that way. Okay, think that, yeah, it does work, but I do think there's higher risks when you're using the water pump without a hand like pump attachment. Next on this list would be all-day stretchers, okay? Now, all-day stretchers, are they typically safe? Like, yeah, I honestly think they do. I can maybe think of one guy that's injured himself with a all-day stretcher, and it was just like literally a blister cap. The reason why I don't like all-day stretchers is because, number one, I don't think it's a very efficient exercise to have to wear something with low tension all day. Can you get gains from it? Like, yeah, you can. I personally don't know of like hardly any guys that have actually made like legitimate gains and actually posted about it and said, yes, it's from this all-day stretcher. Okay, I think Derek popularized like the Phalloson Forte, which I think is overpriced. It is FDA approved, but it's FDA approved for things like after prostate cancer surgery or other kind of pelvic floor injuries that cause shrinkage. I don't think it's particularly effective, and then to have to wear it all day, the more time that you are spending with your penis under some sort of tension, the higher the risk of potential injury is. And the fact that this is supposed to be worn all day or even slept in it, I really don't like that personally. And once again, guys, this is my list. Next on the C tier is probably going to upset a lot of people, but people who know me are not going to be surprised, and that's going to be hard clamping using a traditional cable clamp. If it was just like personally my list based on my experiences, I would have put this much lower actually. I would have put it probably in the D tier or maybe even the N tier, just because the one major injury that I've had, which was hard flaccid combined with soft gland syndrome, was a direct result of hard clamping. Now, if you do hard clamping correctly, it can be done safely and it can be done very effectively actually. I've never said that clamping is not effective. It is. I don't think I'm a dumb guy, and I did it wrong and injured myself, okay? I think it's very hard to get right. I think there's a delicate balance between kegling and your pelvic floor, and particularly, especially when you have something hard and like constrictive and clamped down on your penis. For that reason, I never recommend it to anybody, and I also have coached several guys that have injured themselves from clamping, okay? I would have put it lower if it wasn't for the fact that I do think you can get legitimate girth gains from hard clamping, but that risk to benefit ratio makes me put it down lower, guys. Before I go on to the next tier, if you will, guys, my course is live. If you want to be personally, like, essentially coached by me, I go through step by step in video format of everything you need to know, breaking down the equipment, the setup, what you need to do to prep beforehand, literally all of that, my routine, the sets. It's all broken down with step-by-step video guides on my website, guys. It's on Thinkific. You can find the link in the description. If you're interested, check it out. All right, guys, so what's the next tier? That's going to be my B tier, okay? So, like, B tier is actually, like, third place. I don't know how you guys do your tiers. Like, I don't understand how this stuff, how is S tier the best tier? Like, how does that even make sense? But whatever, okay? So for my B tier exercises, okay, number one on the list is going to be actually manual stretches for length. Guys, if you've seen this video, you know me. You know how I feel about manual stretches for length. I personally think they're easy. I personally think they're effective. However, it doesn't matter personally what I think for this list, because there are guys who injure themselves doing manual stretches. Either they pull too quickly, or they pull too hard, or they just don't know how to do it correctly. It leaves a lot of room for interpretation because you don't know how much strength you're pulling with or how much tension you're pulling with. So especially that if you're one of those guys that's trying to like measure strain and, that stuff is important to you, then that's going to be a little bit harder to do when you're doing manual stretches. However, manual stretches are the only thing that I've ever done for length. I think that they work. I love the fact that you have built-in breaks. You're using your hand, you're pulling, you're applying tension, and then your hand gets tired and you relax. It's literally almost like built-in intervals in there. It is a little frustrating to me that it's like, oh, interval length work is the way to go. And I'm like, guys, I've been saying that with the beginning with manual stretches. Like, you're not pulling and holding for 10 and 15 minutes at a time. Your hand gets tired. So you have built-in breaks. You pull and hold for, 30 seconds, 90 seconds, and you relax. It's letting the blood flow return to the area. And then you have a built-in check. He's like, okay, I did that stretch. All right, I relaxed. How's it feeling? Like, there's all of these benefits to doing manual stretches, but I do get that fact that people do injure themselves, and I do think that with the kind of ambiguity on how much tension do I pull with does leave a little to be desired. But, just so in my course, I do break down that as far as like how to know if you're pulling with the appropriate tension. But that's why I'm putting manual stretches on this B tier. Next is going to be vacuum hanging, okay? Guys, in general, I think hanging is very safe, okay? I'm not going to lie to you. I think it's very safe, and I also think it's very effective. The reason why vacuum hanging is in this tier and not higher is because of vacuum blisters. I know it's like a fairly trivial thing, but like blisters on the penis give me the heebie-jeebies. It's one of those things that like I never want to experience. And yeah, you take a couple weeks off, you recover, it's no big deal. But the fact that like you put on that vac cap, and if you're either pulling with too much tension or you don't have it sealed appropriately, or you didn't do the water trick appropriately, you can get a big like bubbly blister on your penis. I don't like that. I'm putting that down in the B tier. Down along in this B tier as well is going to be shopping bag hanging. Basically, it's like, in my opinion, this is what I mean by shopping bag hanging is like you literally take like a plastic bag and you put let's just say you take a plastic bag and you put a 10-pound weight inside the plastic bag, you put that onto your wrist, and then you use that to do a manual stretch with. The reason I put this higher than manual stretches is because you know exactly with what force you're pulling with, more or less. Now, it's not like exactly like you're pulling with 10 pounds because your arm also has weight to it, guys, but you do know how much tension is on there, and you can adjust that in a fairly standardized fashion. So I actually do think that's a little bit better than your traditional manual stretch if you want to go that route. Personally, I just do like manual stretches. I don't do shopping bag hanging, okay? That's going to be it for the B tier. So next we're going to go to the A tier, okay? So this is like second best because, for this list, whatever, S tier is going to be the best, okay? So what is in this list? Compression hanging. Some of the other devices on here that, we either talked about or are going to talk about, but truly that hasn't impacted like how I'm rating these things. Like, for compression hanging, the reason why I like it is because you don't have that vacuum component to it. I'm not going to mention the specific name by name, but I personally were to get a device, I would compression hang. I wouldn't, we're going to get into the other devices here, but that's pretty much the only device that I would personally consider using right now on myself. But I've already talked about how I think that hanging, it's a constant tension. You can know exactly how much weight you're using. I do think it's a very safe and a very effective method. That's why it's in that A tier. This might surprise some of you guys and maybe upset some of you guys, but actually pump I would put in the A tier. The reason for that is because when you're using the water pump with a hand pump, you're using the pump to slowly squirt out the water. You're not jamming it into your pelvis, and you have a more controlled pump. The reason why this isn't higher is because you still don't know how much pump pressure you're pumping with. And with a lot of these companies that make these hydro pumps with a hand pump, you can actually exceed what is the safe limit if you pump to 100%. I can't put it in the S tier. I do think that water gives a more uniform pressure distribution, and especially if you're using warm water, it can help to facilitate, the additional use of heat in there. I do think, and quite honestly, guys, at least 80% of my gains have been from using a water pump with a hand pump. Now, 80% of the time, I'm literally using an air pump, but I've only recently switched to the air pump in recent years. And then last on this A tier is actually going to be soft clamping. I do think, once again, clamping is effective for girth. In my opinion, if you need to do soft clamping in a very specific way to get it right, but when you're using soft clamping with actual like C-rings, constriction rings, the rings are somewhat flexible. It's not like a hard fixed point like that. If you do a Kegel, you're going to put blood flow in that that ring is going to relax at least a little bit and ease some of that pressure off your pelvic floor. So I think it's like clamping without that risk of actual damage, without as much risk as damage to your pelvic floor. So that's why I do think it's a kind of an A tier exercise. You know, I argued putting it lower just because, once again, I do think it's hard to get right. But so I would put that somewhere between like an A and B tier exercise, okay? Guys, regardless of what exercise you're doing, you need to be using a good citrulline-based supplement in order to keep your endothelial function, your penile tissue healthy. So S tier, there's only 2 things that are going to be on this S tier list. The reason why I put these things on the S tier list is because, number 1, they have the most clinical data behind them. And number 2, I think that they are very safe to do, partially because of that clinical data. And you know, whatever. Number 3, because I do think they're effective. So what's going to be number 1 on my S tier list? It's actually going to be extending. This could be extending with either a vac or like the vacuum cap, or with the compression attachment. So if you use like the compression hanger attachment and use an extender, that's another way to do it. The reason why I like using an extender is because most of the extenders have like at least like a little U shape at the base. So that base is actually going to, you know, you got to be a little careful because it could put pressure on that neurovascular bundle. But in general, it's going to keep the tension off of the actual base of your penis. It's going to keep the tension in your shaft because you have those 2 anchor points right there. It's kind of like why I recommend doing manual stretches with 2 hands, because there's that 2 anchor points. The stretch is actually in between. I do think you're getting a good stretch on your actual penile tissue. And there's the most clinical data behind it, guys. There's several published studies looking at the use of extenders, several of which including just men that have like basically small penis syndrome. It's not like men with like Peyronie's disease where you can see like a correction of the curve and an increase in the length that way. It's legitimate data showing that it works. I personally, like I said, I would use a compression cap rather than a vac cap. But if you do a vac cap and you know how to do it, then, you know, do you guys. Or if you're not afraid of a little blister that's going to heal, you know, do you. But I do think that for length work, using an extender is going to be the safest and probably arguably most effective thing. Though, like, if you ask me, I truly don't think as far as efficacy, there's a big difference between hanging or extending. And what is my S tier, like, number 1 exercise? You guys already know, you're on this video. An air pump with a gauge. I really don't get a lot of hate in these videos. I don't know why I always say that. It's been almost uniformly loved. And guys, these are just my opinions. You're welcome. You're entitled to your opinion. I would love to hear your opinion. If we could please just maybe keep it respectful, as if like you would actually say something to me like in person, rather than just being a douche in the comments. But, you know, you're entitled to your opinion. Air pumping, it has legitimate data behind it. There's a whole paper published in the Journal of Urology about using like vacuum erection devices. Now, that's vacuum erection devices for men that have erectile dysfunction, not in the setting of penile enlargement. But there's data in using vacuum erection, in using pumps for actual Peyronie's disease. And most recently with the P-Long trial, it showed that amongst other things that were used, that a 1/2 inch in girth was gained in 6 months using an air pump, okay? With the gauge, there's major problems with that study, including the pressure. If you guys haven't seen my Go Live with Dr. Brandeis, if it hasn't been uploaded yet, it will be uploaded because I'm going to go live with him to discuss the problems with that trial, amongst other things, and just a general PE discussion. But I think it's safe. You know exactly what pressure you're using. I think it's very easy. I think it's something that can be done every day. There's clinical evidence that it's going to improve your erection function. There's clinical evidence in rat models, I know, animal models, but still in rat models that it does in fact increase penile length significantly. There's clinical data that it's safe, there's clinical data that it's effective, and it's easy, without a doubt, pound for pound. I'll say this, I will die on this hill. Pumping is without a doubt the best PE exercise, period, guys, period. It doesn't matter where you get your pump from. There's a lot of different places you can get it. I don't care where you get it, guys. However, I think it's the greatest exercise, and I think it should, even if people are just doing length work, they should do some light pumping up afterwards just to get the healthy blood flow in there. Anyways, guys, that's my tier list. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace and love.